Okay, chapter 16, day 4 video. Today we're going to focus on what is binomial expansion. Now, this is going to be kind of a newer thing for us to do. We've done it on a very small scale. We have never called it binomial expansion before. So we better define what it is. So binomial expansion, it's what you get after you multiply out the binomial, all right? So we're multiplying out a binomial, hence the binomial expansion. So what you get after you multiply out a binomial, that is raised to a power, okay? We've done some of this in the past. So for example, if I said expand x plus 4 quantity squared, we've done this before. We've written it twice because squared means times itself. And then we multiply the first, the outer, the inner, and the last. And we get x squared plus 4x plus 16. And this is what we end up with. This is our binomial expansion. Okay? Now, vocabulary. We start talking about terms. Terms are separated by plus or minus sign. So this would be the first term. The 8x would be this second term. The 16 is the third term, also called the last term. In this case, this is the second term, but it's also called the middle term. So when we expand out, this is what we get. And then we also talk about the first term, the second term, the third term, or the first term, the middle term, the last term. If there's more than 3 terms, there might be a middle term, there might not be. If there's an even number of terms, there won't be. Let's take a look. Expand out a little bit to the third power. So that means this times itself, all right? Well, we got to kind of take it in pieces and parts here. So I'm going to take these two, and I'm going to do the first, outer, inner, last, the double distribute. And when I do this, I get x squared plus an xy plus an xy, so I get 2xy's, and y times y gets me y squared. Well, now I got to multiply this times all 3 things, and then this times all 3 things, just distributing. And when I do that, I get x to the third plus 2x squared y plus x y squared plus x squared y plus 2x y squared plus y to the third. I mean, that starts to get pretty long pretty quickly, but that's if I multiply and expand it out. Now I combine my like terms. I've got an x squared y and an x squared y gives me 3x squared y's. I have an xy squared and an xy squared, 2 of them, total 3, and I have a y cubed. And so in this situation, here's my first term, here's my second term, here's my third term, here's my fourth term, which is also called the last term. There is no middle term in this because there's no middle term if you have only 4 things, okay? But binomial expansion, one of the things they're going to ask you to do on the test is to either expand out or find a certain term. If I said, for example, what is the third term, you would tell me this answer right here, 3xy squared. If I said, what's the last term, you would say it's y to the third. Now, I know what you're thinking. This gets really big, really fast. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to look at an easy way for finding a specific term. So we're going to look at an easy way for finding a specific term. So for example, if I said, what is the third term of the expansion of x plus 2y to the 5th power? I don't want to write all of that out. So we have an easy way to tackle it, and the steps are over here on the side. So the first step we're going to take, and so this is just going to be a methodical process that you're going to have to just memorize on how to do, and just do it, all right? First step, write out NCR for all terms until n is equal to r, until they finally match. But you have to start with r equals 0. So I'm going to write out NCR, okay, for each of these. All right, so I'm going to write out 5C0, 5C1, 5C2, 5C3, 5C4, 5C5. I start with 0. I keep going until I'm done with 5C5, until these match, until I have the same amount, okay? So that's my first step, all right? First step, write out NCR for all the terms until you get to where the two numbers match. Second, put the first part of the binomial in parentheses and the second part in parentheses, and then with its sign in case it's negative. So what do I mean by that? I mean, here's the first part of the binomial. This is going to go right here in its own set of parentheses. Second part, right here in its own set of parentheses. And so for every single one of these NCR pieces, you're going to put a set of parentheses with the first part, a set of parentheses with the second part. Now if this was negative, you'd put a negative in here. Or if this was negative, you'd put a negative in here. Okay? But they're not. So I'm not going to put a positive sign, it's implied positive. And I'm going to write it over and over and over and over. And I'm going to do it for every single one of these. So now we have NCR all the way until R equals the 5 equals the 5. Or if this is a 7, then you'd have to go until this says a 7. And then I have the first term written in parentheses next to each, and the second term written in parentheses next to each. Now again, these are binomials, so there's only going to be two terms. All right? Third step. Put powers on the parentheses in the same order that they are on NCR for the first term only. So for the very first term, I'm going to put the powers the same that they appear here, okay? The same that they appear there, for the first term only. So for my very first term, I have a power of 5 and 0. So this 5 and 0 is going to go just like this. 5, 0. This 5 right here. The 0 right here. 5, 0, 5, 0. Okay? Just mimic. Boom. For binomial expansion. It has nothing to do with binomial probability. It just happens to have the same name in it. Fill in the other powers. So now I'm going to go back and fill in these other powers. Okay? So let's see what this says. Fill in the other powers, increasing one of them and decreasing the other by 1 as you go down. All right, so I'm going to fill in the powers. One of them is going to be going up by 1 as we go. The other is going down by 1 as we go. Okay? So let's watch. So this starts out at 5. Well, it's going to go down. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. This starts out at 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There. You start with these powers, and then this goes down and this goes up. Okay? And that's that step. Number 5, select the correct term from the question and then simplify what needs to be simplified. So select the correct term from the question. Well, the question said, what is the third term? Okay? So let's take a look. This first one we call the first term. The second one is called the second term. And so on. This is the third, this is the fourth, this is the fifth, this would be the sixth, or also called the last. Whatever one's last, we also call it last. Now, is there a middle term here? No. There's no middle term. All right? So now it says, what is the third term? Third term. So I need to go down and pick the third term. So all of this is the only thing that I am worried about is right here. This is the third term. The rest of it I don't care about anymore. So all of that I'm going to bring down, okay? And I'm going to write it 5c2 x 2y, and what were the powers on those? 3 and 2. So select the correct term and now simplify. All right? So let's simplify. 5c2, that is 10. X to the third power is x to the third power. 2y squared, well that's 2 squared and y squared. Don't forget you have to square both of these pieces, or whatever power it is, you have to do it to that. So now clean it up a little bit. 10 times 4 is 40, x to the third, y squared. So what is the third term? There it is, right there. That's what I would get if I had to write out, like I did in the beginning, all of this stuff, but I had 5 of them. It would be a big mess, but that would be the third term. Okay? One other vocab note. Sometimes they'll ask only for the coefficient. So this part right here is the coefficient, which is the number in front of the letters of the third term. Okay? This whole thing is the third term. Okay, this whole thing is the third term. This would be the coefficient of the third term. Sometimes the question might ask, what's the coefficient of the third term? You have to find the whole third term and then just pick out the 40. Sometimes the question asks, what is the third term? In that case, it's the whole thing. We're going to practice this in class.